Hello, students. I want you to guess what you think we might be learning about today based on what you see on the screen. A curiosity is something that you are curious about, something that you want to learn more about. We're going to be looking at some curiosities as a class, just like Mary Anning. What do you notice about this photograph? Well, to me, it looks like a face or a skull. This is actually the jaw and a skull of a pocket mouse that lived 23 million years ago. It is very similar to the type of pocket mouse living today. Paleontologists can tell that the mouse's ears used to be very big. What do you notice about this fossil? Well, whenever you tell about what you notice, you can use sentence starters like, I noticed the color is, or I notice the shape is, or I notice the size is, and then you can use adjectives to describe what you are seeing. We are going to continue to learn about the discovery of fossils as we closely read Stone Girl, Bone Girl. Now, we can practice many things together to become great close readers. So we can look closely at the pictures, reread important parts of the text, act out important parts of the text, listen carefully to the words, talk with classmates about the text, draw and write about the text, answer questions about the words and pictures using details from the text. What will you practice to become a better reader? Our learning target today is I can answer questions about important events from the book Stone Girl, Bone Girl. Where will you look or listen for key details? So you might look in the photographs, in the text, or in the dialogue. Dialogue is when people are speaking. So we're going to be looking at Stone Girl, Bone Girl, pages 1 through 4. All right, so we are going to be reading Stone Girl, Bone Girl, the story of Mary Anning of Lyme Regis by Lawrence N. Holt. When Mary Anning was a baby, she was struck by lightning. It split a huge elm tree and threw Mary right out of her nurse's arms. Her father was in his carpenter's shop when he heard the terrible news. He dropped his hammer and ran through the stormy streets of Lyme Regis. Gently, he lifted the limp body of his little girl, and his tears flowed down like rain. But then an extraordinary thing happened. Mary Anning slowly opened her eyes. She reached out a tiny hand and touched the amazed face of her father, and the little girl began to smile. It was then her father realized Mary Anning was no ordinary girl. The years rolled by like waves, and Mary grew into a clever girl. A mind as quick as lightning, her mother teased. Mary had few friends, except her father, whom she adored. Like everyone else in the town, she called him Pepper because of his speckled beard. One Saturday, Pepper closed his workshop early. He took Mary down to the cliffs by the crashing sea. She held tightly to his hand because she knew how dangerous it could be. The clay cliffs at Lyme Regis are soft as melting chocolate. Mary had sometimes seen huge slabs of land slipping and tumbling to the beach below. Pepper had stories of whole fields on the cliff tops which had disappeared beneath the feet of the grazing cattle. He knew a place, he said, where half a farmhouse sat, balanced on the cliff edge. He and his quarryman friend had peered over and seen the remains of the kitchen and even the garden gate, smashed to splinters on the rocks below. Oh. Let's reread part of page 4. The years rolled by like waves, and Mary grew into a clever girl. A mind as quick as lightning, her mother teased. Mary had few friends except her father, whom she adored.
Let's hear that again. Mary had few friends except her father, whom she adored. All right, so let's take a look at the sentence a little bit closer to understand the meaning. Who is this sentence about? It's about Mary. And what did Mary have? She had a few friends. How many friends is few? Well, it's possibly three or not very many at all. Now, what if we added the word a instead? Would that change the meaning if we said Mary had a few friends? Yes, saying a few is more positive and usually means we have enough of something. Saying Mary had a few friends means she had a good number of friends. All right, so we could basically put this in our own words and say Mary didn't have a lot of friends, or Mary hardly had any friends. What is something that you have few of or not very many of? Or what is something that you have few of or not enough of? And you could say that by using the sentence starter, I have few blank. Now, whom did she have in her life who was separate from her few friends? Her father. It says, except her father. Why do you think the author used the word except? To say her father was different from her other friends, and to also show that she was close with her father, but wasn't very close with others. Now, what if we replace the word except with including? Would that change the meaning? So Mary had few friends, including her father. Well, if we change that, that would mean that just one of her few other friends was her father and that he was not different or special, which he was. So, how did Mary feel about her father? She adored him. Okay, I've mixed up the different parts of the sentence, so let's put this back together. So, take a look at the four different parts, and I want you to think about how we could put that back in order. Okay, so when we reconstruct, now construct means to like build or to make, and the word or the prefix re means again. So we're going to build this again. So the sentence would be Mary had few friends except her father, whom she adored. Let's look back at page 3 and 4. What do you notice about where they live? I notice that they live by cliffs and by water. Mary had sometimes seen huge slabs of land slipping and tumbling to the beach below. What was slipping and tumbling? It was the pieces of land, rocks, parts of the cliff, lots of dirt, and they went to the ground. The clay cliffs were soft as melting chocolate. Imagine melting chocolate. What do you know about melted chocolate? It's not solid and it is soft. Think about your Halloween candy. If you got some chocolate bars and maybe you left it in the car and it got warm in your car, it wasn't hard anymore, was it? It was soft and gooey and runny and just really messy. Now, why would the author want to compare the cliffs to melted chocolate? Well, by saying that the cliffs were like melted chocolate, he's saying that the cliffs were soft and messy too. Our learning target is I can retell the beginning of Stone Girl, Bone Girl using important details about the events and the characters. Now, what familiar word do you hear in retell? I hear the word tell. That little part in front of the word re is a prefix because it sits in front of another full word, tell. The prefix re means again, so we're going to tell again. Now, when you retell, you tell the story again using just the important details about the characters and the events. Sometimes retelling helps us to remember what happened in the text, and sometimes it makes other people want to read the book. Now, good retelling takes practice and perseverance because it can be tricky, and some retellings can be really long. All right, listen to me as I try to retell this story. First, there was a little girl, and she was a cute little baby, and she was being held by her nurses. There were three nurses, and they sang her songs like Mary Had a Little Lamb, and they were taking her for a nice long walk in the town. Some of the nurses were singing high, and some of them were singing low, and they probably didn't hear the thunderstorm. Now, let's stop right there. This retelling I gave you was not a good example of retelling because I put in way too many details, and those details were not important. What details were not important in the long retelling I just told you? Well, the fact that Mary was cute, the songs that they sang, and that they took a walk and how they were singing, those were not important at all. Now, some retellings can also be too short. Listen to this. Mary Anning was a baby. She had a dad and a mom, and she lived by the water. Wait a minute. After hearing this, would you consider this a good example of retelling? No way, because it did not include important details about the characters and the events. Good retelling tells the most important parts of the story. So think about how you could retell this story that includes the important parts. So when you give a good retelling, you can use the pictures to help you. Think about what's really important. Sometimes I picture the book in my head and it helps me to imagine about what was going on in the story. All right. Now, when you retell, you can use story starters like this sentence is about blank. This story takes place in blank. One fact about Mary is blank. And one thing that happened so far is blank. So that's given us the most important details. And it's leaving out the things that are not so important about, like that she was a cute baby or that they sang certain songs. So, we are going to be answering a selected response question. So, when we do this, we need to read the question very carefully. Then try a strategy. So, here's some different things you can do. We can cover the answers and try to think of the answer yourself. Then, or you could read through each answer and think about what happened in the text. You can cross out the answer choices you know that are incorrect. You can look closely and use details from the text to help you choose the best answer. And then you can circle the whole answer. All right. Remember that after you read the question carefully, you can use one of these strategies to help you. Show perseverance if this is challenging, and you can always ask for help if you need it. All right. So let's first read this question. At the beginning of the story, what happens to Mary? So I want you to think about that. Use some of the strategies that I just talked about. So I'm going to read it one more time and go back to these strategies. At the beginning of the story, what happens to Mary? So you can use one of these strategies. I'll stop for a minute so you can think. All right, at the beginning of the story, Mary gets hit by lightning. So I want you to think about what question strategy did you use to help you to solve this question. So you may have had to think back to the story, looked at the pictures, covered the answers, crossed out the things you didn't that you know for sure is not the answer.